Hey Rob,
Gary, you
how are
look
you, my
just like
friend?
you did an hour ago when we were on a different call.
Yeah, it's been a little bit of a crazy day.
Yeah, yeah. So now you're the king of Instagram as well as TikTok.
Yeah, I don't know about that. It was today's call was a little enlightening. I kind of got like knocked off my horse a little bit.
Well, that's good. We all need to be knocked off the horse occasionally,
Yeah, yeah. It's so funny. So
especially if we go in
it's
the wrong direction. I think that's why it happens.
it's interesting you say that. So it's yeah. I'm still just processing. I kind of feel like Chris Rock after the
You feel a bit slapped around in public.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Isn't that the most extraordinary thing? I don't want to get into, the tittle tattle and the peanut gallery, but it's amazing that a man like Will Smith, who would apparently have the world at his fingertips, that he would be able to feel disrespected because he said about disrespect. Like, how could a man like that feel disrespected when you have, the adulation of millions of people around the world who think you're just incredible? I mean, he is incredible, but astonishing to me that I always find it fascinating when someone who would appear to have everything can feel disrespected or would feel the need to have anger as a form of control or something. It's crazy, isn't it? Because we look at people like that and they have countless millions of dollars and fame and fortune and good looking and beautiful family and everything, and it's like perfect life. But then cracks appear, and then I'm not saying cracks are appearing in his life, but it's astonishing that how could he feel disrespected when the evidence is so compelling to the contrary?
That's a great analogy, right? Because we tend to look at these moments in time as defining, and the idea that he would have to, our society is so bludgeoned with this idea of right and wrong, right? I mean, I think Joshua calls it the right and wrong cult,
Right. Yep.
right? And here's an amazing guy, beautiful human being, and um, he dips down right into this low vibration,
Yeah.
and if you really want to look at as an example of what he was doing, he first started laughing. He then looked at his wife. She was not happy. He then felt he needed to
Okay.
change some sort of condition, some outside circumstance.
Yeah.
And if you look at, then you talk about where you dip down. So he dipped down into a place that we've all been, right? I mean, it's not a shot at Will Smith. He's an amazing human being, right? Beautiful person. But he dipped into a place where the only way I can show my worthiness is through physical harm. I have to physically um, accost another human being to prove my worthiness to the outside circumstance, which seemed to be at the time his wife. I have no idea, but if I'm seeing that, and this whole thing really just you could see it slowly taking course.
I didn't see it. So he looked at her and that's when he got mad. So, I mean, that suggests that perhaps he feels he's responsible for her happiness or emotional state.
Oh,
And
it's bigger than that. She's cheated on him and openly said they had a. I mean, she runs a podcast, and she said, "Yeah, I cheated on you because you weren't man enough to love me. If you were man enough to love me, you wouldn't." I mean, she said, and I can't quote it, but she said some things that
okay.
I give, and that's why I give Will Smith all of these props, right? Because he's such an amazing guy. I mean, he stood there and took a live. You could look it up. I
Okay.
think it's
Well,
called
if she
the
said that, I
Red.
guess he had a need to prove what a man he was, and you know,
I
in a
don't know, right?
UFC world, he is. He got
Yeah,
up there and
but
did the business.
you talk about outside circumstances affecting your emotions and then affecting your reality.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like the most perfect example,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
of something.
Very
So
interesting. I just always find things like that fascinating when someone amazing stubs their toe in this way, and where will it go? Will he be seen as a angry person, and will people say he's wonderful, or will people, like, normally after you win an Oscar, like, apparently all the doors open and you get all these amazing roles, but but the opposite could happen, that he may lose endorsements and not be offered any roles because because I mean, it may blow over and be nothing, or it could actually be a completely new fork in the road for him.
It's super interesting, right? And I think Jim Carrey. I don't know if you know who Jim Carrey is, the actor.
Yeah, he had a comment about it, didn't he?
Well, he's on the same journey we are. He's in a very, very enlightened place. And if you look at what I mean, his response was, I just, Will's a beautiful human being. It's a shame that he had to experience this, this sort of lower vibration, and then he acted upon it. But obviously he's a beautiful person and we love him. Like he doesn't judge or criticize.
Yeah.
I mean, some of the stuff Jim Carrey says is pretty profound.
Right. I wasn't aware of any of that. I only know him as a, comedian or comic actor.
Yeah, he's kind of gone off he kind of went off the Hollywood reservation, and really, has become a tremendous enlightened speaker.
Wow.
Tremendous. Yeah, he's on the level of Gary.
Right.
Like if you like look at anything he's really, if you watch any interview that he's done,
oh, check him out. Yeah.
That, and you can see him talk about it. He's just like the universe is just love. If you can express love, then you can connect with the universe. He's all about that. I mean, he's
okay. I'll check him out. I had no idea.
He doesn't judge. He's,
How interesting.
Judges a lot less, whatever that may be.
Yeah. So what are we going to talk about today? I think you WhatsApped me some stuff.
It's interesting. So what I kind of feel this idea of the fear, this idea of feeling, for a moment anyway, because this is kind of like top of mind for me, is that fear is good, that negative emotions are good. You shouldn't be afraid of either. That they're there, that we've been trained through our cultural messages to see or to feel that our negative emotions are bad and you should fear them and you should do everything you can to stay away from them. And what we're learning now is that negative emotions are the communication network that the universe uses to alert you, to give you a little nudge that you're off your path, to maybe take a deep breath. So, and then we kind of learn that we look at everything through the perspective of victimhood. So there's always a little bit of fear and there's always a little bit of negativity involved, and it's our sort of job to understand that, and then to continue to try to see it from this higher perspective. So when someone says something to you, when you think you're on the path and someone says something to you, and all of a sudden you're like, wow, okay, I felt that, and you're like, okay, well, maybe I'm on the wrong path, or maybe I have more work to do. It kind of throws a wrench in those things, right? It's that. So the idea is, how do you interpret the negative emotions and the negative feelings that are coming through when events happen? So you're doing something, enjoy, you're having a good time with it. All of a sudden, somebody then steps in and says something, and you take a step back, and it may be somebody that you're working with or somebody that you're respecting, and you're on the same path, and they're like, whoa, you didn't do enough yet. That doesn't make sense to me. And you're like, wow, okay. And you have this sort of negative nudge. Like, what do you do with it?
Yeah, that's a good discussion to have. So negative emotions feel unpleasant, like for whatever reason, they feel very unpleasant. So many people want to avoid them because one way or another. And then we discover that, there's this thing called the emotional guidance system. And when you feel a positive emotion, it tells you that you're on track. And when you feel a negative emotion, it tells you actually have a fear or a limiting belief that's actually blocking the flow. And so the idea is to use the arrival of a negative emotion as kind of like your radar or your traffic light system or whatever you want to call it. It's an indicator, right? So it's a guidance system that says you're off track, like get back on track. And so it's a whole different frame around fear and emotion, isn't it? Like negative emotions, that instead of trying to avoid them, which I think we do instinctively because they're unpleasant. When you feel a negative emotion, you want to get rid of it because it feels horrible. But we're saying this is actually something quite different because it's an indicator that we have a limiting belief. And if we can uncover that limiting belief and disprove it, then we will no longer feel that negative emotion. Or if we do, we won't feel it intensely anymore.
So you just brought back some clarity to me, as you always do, and I appreciate that. When you feel that fear, right? Like I was, because Jessica just said, this, that, and the other thing, and I was like, wow, that's powerful, Jessica. Thank you. And it kind of hit. So the immediate thing that pops up is fear. What I missed in what you just said is that fear isn't your off track necessarily. Fear is, hey, there's another limiting belief there that you can continue to dig up. You can continue to process and then move on past it. So the idea that these, and I think you and I were talking this morning on one of the things that Joshua is a negative emotion, a positive emotion, or is the game of warm or colder.
Yeah, that's a really good. It's a very good analogy, isn't it? Yeah.
Oh, so powerful, right?
Yeah.
Crazy. So for me, like the negative emotion was like I was going in a direction, I was feeling good, like yeah. Like I'm getting there, and then all of a sudden, like no, colder. You're getting colder.
Yeah. It's like, what? I'm sure it's over here. It's got to be. Surely you mean to be saying warmer, but no.
And if you look at it that way, it really becomes this powerful tool versus this self-doubt, negative energy. It becomes a positive tool, a directional tool for us. And that to me is like to be able to redefine, reframe, reshape a negative emotion to have a positive effect. Like that's powerful.
Yeah. I'm going to find this, just going to have a look on my laptop here while we're talking. I want to find this little sort of thingy, which is about having confidence and authenticity around saying something or overcompensating. In other words, finding that the sweet spot between the fear around something and stating your case and who you are and being who you are on the one hand, or being brash and overcompensated on the other. I'm just trying to see if I can find this graphic.
Well, it's funny you say that too, because I do think that there's a difference between this overconfidence, this attitude of someone who can't be wrong versus just being confident and loving, right?
Yeah, I found the thing. So what you want is self-acceptance. So on the one side before that is shame or embarrassment, and on the other side is overcompensation or arrogance. And what we actually want is to be in the sweet spot in the middle, which is actually self-acceptance. And it's an interesting thing, as you start to be more authentically yourself, like what does that look like? Like, how do I get into that sweet spot where I'm not overcompensating or pushing it too hard, and I'm no longer shameful or embarrassed to actually say who I truly am in the world?
Yeah, I mean, it's wow. I think I do want to pursue and move into this field of reflection and enlightenment. There is a fear of leaving the paycheck and the resume that's taken 35 years to create, right? So and the idea that I don't have 12 degrees, although if you look at the number of courses, books, and whatever I've done over the last 10 years, right, it surpasses any degree or any any course requirement. But I still, there's still all of these, there are still outside circumstances and out in society's sort of guidelines that create self-doubt, right? Even and because of that confidence, it almost turns into arrogance because you need to pound that chest a little harder, or you feel like you need to pound that chest a little harder.
Well,
Not that you
that's the
have
way
to.
we used to do things, right? We just double
Right.
down on the energy or the pushiness or whatever. But I mean, what I discovered is when I speak from a place of authenticity and let it flow, that the energy that comes out with that is amazing. And you know, I did a lot of public speaking, and I noticed that I had slides and a track to follow. What I'd say will be different every time, and it didn't matter because people pick up on the energy, the trust, the authenticity, the connection. And I imagine that the words I delivered them in these investment seminars I used to do live, you know, in a room in the before times, it was many years ago, actually, 20 years ago. The words I said didn't matter anymore, really, because they were different every time. And it was all good stuff because, you know, I did know a lot about the topic, but it was actually the energy and the authenticity and the flow that really made all the difference. When you're talking about moving from, you know, the normal paycheck and all the rest of it to doing something different and all of that, it's funny you should say that because all of that is actually stuff I'm working on right now in the course that we're putting together. Like one of the things that, there are a number of things that really get people's attention in this course. One is personal branding, which is what we call a front door need. In other words, that will bring people in. But once they get in, then I introduce them to some other things that might be blocking their flow or stopping them getting to be where they want to be. Personal branding is fun and positive, and it is really, really important and very valuable. But unless you have some of the other things in place, then it's going to be hard. And one of those things that I talk about is when to quit your day job or to kick away another source of income and how you make that transition.
Yeah, that's powerful. I mean, so, you know, I think today which was interesting, and I think this is the universe's way of just sort of, you know, shaking the tree. And, you know, I think every time you feel like you're on this path and things calm down, the universe says, okay, are you ready? And it throws you some more curveballs, right? And you say, okay, and you got to process those, and you go for a little bit, you process those, you go for a little bit. And every time you've processed those curveballs and those limiting beliefs, you've expanded more, you've gone to another level, and you continue to grow on that path. So for me, like today, you know, I was leading into this like just in a like sort of cruising on cruise control. And I think a few things today, the work that I'm doing professionally got a little bit more intense, a little bit more, requires more of my time. And then, you know, sort of Jessica pointing out a few more limiting beliefs that I can process. And it all like sort of happened like within a 5-minute period. And I'm like, wait a minute, I kind of liked where I was. Can I go back to like an hour ago?
Yeah. But the answer is no, you can't. It doesn't work. There is no path back.
So the thing that I think for, especially for your course, which is going to be so powerful, is the idea that we have a billion, and I'm making up a number for a purpose of this conversation. We have a billion limiting beliefs. There's not enough time in this lifetime to process them all. So we're going to process as many as we can. We're going to identify and process and prove them false. All limiting beliefs are false. So let's take this journey together. Now we can sit in those limiting beliefs as we've done in previous lifetimes, in previous situations, and we can explore those limiting beliefs. That's still a good thing. We're still expanding, right? But now we're at a point where we're ready to expand upwards to, as Abraham Hicks says, raise our vibrational discs. As Joshua says, raise our vibrational energy. Knowing that you'll never process them all, there's just not enough time. Knowing that we'll always be seeing our perspective from victimhood, and the only thing we can do is lessen the thickness of our glasses. So instead of needing Coke bottle glasses, right, come down where eventually we don't need any glasses. That idea for somebody, and this is where I think, you know, you could probably feel the same way. We're used to achieving things. We're used to being told, well, this is the goal. Go make $1 million. Well, I've gone and made $1 million. Go start your own company. Well, I've done that multiple times. Go out and do. So these goals of go out and do, And then here's a goal that has no end. That has no matter what we do, it refocuses us on the present moment to say it's one belief at a time, to stop looking and worrying about the future, to stop recycling memories from the past, to take it all in the moment and say the only thing that matters is this moment right now. There's no more goal to shoot for. And that's the first time in my life that somebody said something and put a process together and without a goal at the end. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally does. And goal setting has been part of our life over many years. But when you look at the way that most things unfolded, like business deals that went really well and opportunities, most of it was not really planned. And the biggest paydays weren't necessarily the function of your goal. So we imagine that we set these goals and that's why we achieve these things. But what actually happened was apparently random circumstances, introductions, meetings, things floated in, ideas floated in. You saw an idea somewhere and thought, oh, okay, somebody else said something, you put it together. So in other words, we imagined that this linear goal setting process was what was getting us where we were going. But I don't know about you, but for me, in truth, it was never actually the way it unfolded. It unfolded completely differently. I got to where I wanted to go to, like in terms of a deal or some money, whatever it might have been in those days. But realistically, if you really analyze how you got there, it was a completely different path. So what you're saying is, I now recognize that these opportunities will come to me. I don't have to be too specific about it because it's going to come to me through a series of introductions, referrals, ideas, people you bump into, ideas that pop into your head, a billboard that you see when you're stopped at the traffic lights, or something pops up on an email or on TikTok or whatever. So in other words, I think it's a more honest assessment of the old school business concept around goal setting to recognize that actually it doesn't really ever unfold that way. Like when my biggest ever payday was a deal that I never expected to happen, and it all just popped up out of nowhere. It exploded, volcanically into this, and it was this crazy thing, and it ended up with me selling out of this business and pocketing some cash. But none of that was ever planned in any way. And you imagine you can only make a lot of money by hard work and goal setting and everything else, but the biggest paydays I had didn't actually come from that.
So you're saying, and I love that, by the way, that's like gold, what you just said right there. I was taking notes. So I now recognize that I don't have to goal set to achieve, period. That opportunities happen when I'm just putting the work in. So when I'm working joyfully, there's a concept here that is really big, that is almost beyond satisfying to know. So I'm used to, and that's what we first started talking, that I'm used to goal setting. So I want this amount of money, I want this kind of car, I want this kind of house, I want this kind of vacation, right? We set those things, I set those things, and then when they appear, let's say they appear, you're like, wow, it was because I wrote them down, it was because I focused on them, right? I bought them in, I created them, right? And I get that. Those little things that are part of all of our lives, right? And become part of our lives because we became a deliberate creator for those little elements. But there's such a bigger assessment out there. That's still, those little goal setting is looking at life from a little limited perspective. When you go into each day open to whatever happens, you take the blinders off, you take the guardrails off, and limitless opportunities can present themselves.
Yeah,
is that sort of how you're saying?
I mean, the mainstream version of that is to be in a state of flow. And people, there's been books written about it, about sports people and business people and creative people in a state of flow. And when you can get into that state and let that happen, that's essentially what you're describing. It's just another way to describe it in more conventional words. So the first part is to get into that state of allowing and openness and creativity and feel the joy of it. And the second thing you've alluded to is that you set the goal for the car or the vacation or whatever this particular material thing is. But what we now know is that, well, what I really want is the feeling that I imagine I'm going to get when I have that thing. So in other words, instead of thinking I specifically want a house that looks like this, and sort of listing all the things, another way would be, well, I want a house where I feel happy and joyous and relaxed. I feel at peace, and I want a house where family and friends want to come and stay and hang out with us, because a house where I feel relaxed and at peace and centered, and where all the people we love most come and visit, that's the house I want. And so I threw away the list of it has to have the following things, because it's what I want to feel, right? And that allows in a whole lot more opportunities and ideas.
So, and I love that. So
I stole that from Trace, my partner, by the way. He said, I don't really care about the house. I don't really care about the house. She said, I want a house where the family and friends will want to come and stay, and we feel good and are happy. And I couldn't really care what the house was like. She said, the garden, that's a different thing. I want a big ass garden. It has to be like, but once again, it's not a specifically formed thing. It doesn't have to meet any criteria. It could be anything, And I thought that's a very good frame, because I eventually I let go of my list of persona and ego based things about a house. And it's like, yeah, actually, I know the feeling, and I want to be in a place where I have that feeling.
Okay, so I love this. So I want to dig into this a little further, where you said, so I now recognize that I don't have to goal set to achieve that, let's say, that feeling in life, right? We can correct that in a second. But there is, so a state of flow. So what are the words? How do we frame, if we're not going to goal set is the old way of doing things. If the new approach to life, this unconditional approach to life, goal setting is not an appropriate activity. We know you and I are working in regular jobs. What is that process? Is it just relying on the present moment to get into the flow every day and say, today I'm going to be aligned, and not to strive for greater expansion? Do you understand what I'm saying? Like,
I think we do want to strive. I don't know if that's the word I would use, but expansion definitely is something we want. So, I mean, it's about openness and allowing and being sensitive to opportunities. So, for example, I kind of figured that in terms of where I'm going now with the business, that in some ways, instead of thinking I need to do this, that, and the other, I sometimes think the money is probably right under my nose and I just can't see it. So I'm making this course, which I think it's a wonderful course, because I know it can help a lot of people, and I keep adding more stuff to it, because I realize just how much knowledge we've accumulated over the last few years to help people get on track with their business, coaches to grow and expand their business, whether they're starting up or jumping to the next level. And then you said to me, well, why don't you start coaching people? Like, it's a common model in this kind of business that you have a course, and the course leads to what they call a back-end offer. And the back-end offer is normally a privately made offer, and it's a high ticket offer. It's high value, high ticket. And so you said to me, I know this model, right? And I'm teaching it in the course. So for heaven's sake, it was sitting under my nose. And you said, well, can you smell that thing under your nose? It's right there in front of you. And you said, you could actually offer a back end offer. You didn't use those words, but that was the frame I know it by. And you could charge X $1,000 a month for two Zoom sessions a week, and some short video clips you send to the people as well. And I stopped and I thought, yeah, well, actually, even if they paid me many thousands of dollars per month for that, I know that they will get value many times back again. And it's like, well, that was pretty obvious, sitting right under my nose. So it was only, and when you first said it, I didn't quite get what you meant. And I asked you a few questions, and then, together we played the warm and cold game, and we kind of got there. And it was, to me, that was astonishing, because there is a massive opportunity that could really, really be a lot of fun. And I know I could do a great job at it, and I could make a big impact for a lot of people and get them where they want to go. And it would be profitable and remunerative as well. And there was this massive opportunity sitting under my nose, and I didn't even see it. So because I didn't quite get what you said at the beginning, I could have said, oh, no, or he doesn't understand this model, or no, that wouldn't work for me, or I don't know anybody who will buy it, And we know now that when you get an idea or an inspiration, the fears pop up, right? And you think, well, like, I want to go to Hawaii. Well, there's Omicron around, and I could get stuck there, and they might cancel their flights, and so whatever. I mean, it's probably not a good example, but whatever you decide to do, like it rained a bit this morning. We could walk down the shop later, but it might rain. But it's like, yeah, but I could take an umbrella or wear a hat, it's not going to rain that hard today anyway. So whatever you feel inspired to do, you get the resistance and the fear pop up. And it's important to recognize that in this process, it's like, yeah, I can see all the reasons why that might be a challenge, but Jerry's right. There is an enormous opportunity there. So let me ask another question. Let me clarify. Let me see your inspiration and mine together. There was two of us actually heading to the same place. And so my point is that by being open to the whole thing instead of discounting it at the first instance, for whatever reason, because the people who are the first few people I'm talking to in the course, in my mind, they wouldn't have that amount of money to spend, but I actually don't know that. And they may be true, but then I can find some other people. But I shouldn't even make that assumption about them, because you have no idea really about who's prepared to spend what to get where they want to go.
And that's beautiful. I mean, Tony Robbins, Dean Grazioso, and Pete Vargas use this. They call it a product suite, right? And the product suite is a triangle, and it starts with something free, right? Yep. And then it starts with something that's less than $100.
Yeah.
And then it goes to something that is 500, and then it has, to your point, that boom, big level, that big ticket item.
Yeah.
So your product suite, which allows you to hit the most people. So you offer like a free book, right? So you give that free book away. You just want to help as many people as possible on their levels. So it's not for you to decide what level somebody wants. You offer the product suite, and you say, hey, what fits your life? You and I do this coaching every day. I can guarantee you, anybody you talk to, I know that this is how I feel. You're a genius. I mean, you're great at our conversations. I take away something new every time. I'm doing it. I'm getting it for free. I thank you for that. Should I be writing you checks at this point? But it's true. So you have that.
I'm going to send you the payment portal for the course next week. You can write me a check.
Yes. I am. As soon as you do that, I'm doing it. And then we'll start recording, because I love it. To your point, like, I've done nothing. So we can literally start with this whole thing, including having 2 jobs at the same time. I just got offered another job. Somebody reached out to me on LinkedIn, a company, a search company, said they're looking for a CEO for a startup company, and they have a lot of money. And I'm like, yeah, here's my resume. So I'm like, meanwhile, I'm going down this path of, I want to leave this industry. People are offering me more stuff, which is great. And my current business which was on, a little bit of a slow pause until money came in, is now being ramped back up. And then this is coming in. I'm like, so all these things are sort of coming now, which is great, to a head in a beautiful way. But I want to leave the things that are going to pay me a lot of money right now and go do the thing that has no monetary remuneration attached to it.
Yeah, but that being said, as part of this course, you will, if you don't see it already, and I think you actually do, you could actually create another source of income from this kind of work. Similar to what I'm saying. Me, right?
Like, this is perfect for us. Like, this is the perfect time.
Yeah.
Like, you got somebody who's right at the beginning of this and that, and we can do it together. And we'll just
And because that, I mean, I can use your idea of the high ticket back end offer, so much per month, whatever it is. I can use that as an example. Like, I'm not just teaching this stuff, I'm actually going to be doing it with all the students, and you're going to be doing a startup concept as well. So, if we talk like once or twice a week, for a couple of times a week for 30 minutes, then those videos I can see will be a really valuable part of the course. Is actually, we're living it with you.
Yeah. And you record those, you put them up on a YouTube channel for yourself, and you tell people, hey, go look at this. I always, I can't tell you, this is from the bottom of my heart. Like, I have felt this from day one. Any idea I've ever had, I have told the world about it. People say, you got to be quiet. You can't tell people your ideas are going to take them and they're going to run. I say to everybody, every single person I do, there are 2 types of people. There are people that can look at a YouTube channel and go and do it themselves. Those are not really very creative. They're going to look at the information, they're going to get it, they're going to go out and they're going to access, which is great. Then there are the people that want you to do it for them. Those are the people, okay, that no matter what you say, they're going to want your one-on-one. No matter what you say to them, no matter what you give, you can give them the greatest piece of gold. You're going to like, Rob, do it with me. We got to do this together, Rob. So I've always shared everything with everybody, because people are going to want the experience. you give them with a one-on-one. So you do a coaching call, you have somebody that's like me saying, yeah, use me, use my whatever, we're going to do something, post them all. And you can say to people, hey, go look at my YouTube channel. This is what a one coaching call looks like. Like people say, oh, that's great. No one's going to say, and I can tell you this, no one's going to say, I'm going to go do that. They're going to say, I want that. I want Rob to do that process with me. Everybody's so afraid about sharing the information that someone may take it. I've created 4 different companies. Before I've created those 4 different companies, I think one company is not around anymore. Every single one of them, I've told the idea, I've talked about it incessantly for like months, if not years, right? Nobody ever did it. Nobody ever does. They want those inspired ideas that you're given are for you, We don't think that way. Someone else is going to steal it. Somebody else isn't getting your inspiration and they're not viewing it the same way. We don't understand that as a society, right? Now you may have boatloads of limiting beliefs that once you create something like I did, someone took it away from you, that's a different story, right? And and now I'm like, it's the greatest thing that ever happened to me, but I've been there, right? So I think with you just have to, the more you share who you are and your vast experience in life, people want to connect with that. And then they want to understand how your experience can help them expand. And so that's sort of where I'm at when we started this conversation about goal setting. Like, it's January 1st. We're no longer goal setting, but society is. So our benefit, what's going to make you and I so special to the world, is we're going to be able to take Joshua's teachings and communicate it in a way that today's society will understand it and want to go, without being 2 years into getting into 2 years, 4 days a week, 4 calls a week with Joshua, getting it, really getting it. On that January 1st, we're going to say, no, we're not going to goal set. We're going to expand. And this is how we're going to do it. We're going to do it to the present moment. I'm just making up words right now. But what I'm trying to understand is what is that description? And I'm not saying we decide it right now. I'm just saying that to me is how you get everybody to go, wow, because goal setting is so ingrained. To say no goal setting, people are like, you know what you're talking about. To say, whoa,
it's a relatively, it's something of a high level concept and probably quite challenging for a lot of people. And
right.
I quoted to you before, I think, something that Gary V said maybe 3 or 4 years ago, when he was predicting that meditation and meditation apps will become a big thing, which is happening.
Yep.
And he said something like, but I haven't tried meditation, I'm scared to, because I think he was worried that he would lose his drive and his edge and his aggression and all that stuff. So in other words, he saw those internal processes as being opposed to his ability to push through and make things happen. And of course, you and I know that if he was to meditate, and maybe he is by now, I haven't followed him lately, that he would just receive even more ideas and inspirations. I mean, he's a fountain of information and inspiration and ideas anyway, but he would just open the channel more if he did that.
You just said it.
Go on.
You just said it, which is beautiful. So goal setting helps focus our drive, our edge, our aggression, so we can push through and make things happen. That is the purpose of goal setting, right?
Yeah.
Theoretically, roughly. So with that, how do we communicate that the flow, I'm just simplifying for the moment, and these are not the right words. I don't even know how to use the words, but how do we communicate that the flow state removes the fear so that there's no drive, there's no edge, there's no aggression, but it absolutely opens up access to infinite information, infinite knowledge with limitless opportunities attached to it. So whatever you think you want, you're going to achieve 10 times that.
Yeah, so
I don't know.
I'm no less ambitious than I was many years ago, but I guess the nature of my ambition has changed. And I guess why was I ambitious in the first place? I guess it was I wanted to realize my potential and achieve something that made me feel amazing. And then it's like, well, what will make me feel amazing now? I'm more aware of. it doesn't mean to say you won't attract or create a whole lot of money. You may or you may not. They're not diametrically opposed, but it's like, yeah, that's good. But when I was making heaps and heaps of money, like lots, I wasn't necessarily any happier. In fact, I was less happy than now. And so the money was good, but I couldn't say it really ever brought me happiness. There's certain things I did with the money, like, I'll go back to Hawaii again. We had a family vacation in Hawaii and it was amazing. It was just wonderful. But that's because Hawaii was magical and we were with people we love. and so what am I trying to say? That, yeah, I guess we're trying to look for how would one describe this to a business person who's in the old way of doing business as opposed to the new approach to business, and how would you talk to them about what we would do instead of goal setting and why that shouldn't be fearful for them, and that they aren't going to lose anything. They're going to end up with more of the things that really matter to them, which they may or may not be currently aware of.
Right. So, and you said it again, I want to realize my true potential. How, if we don't goal set based upon the old approach, right, the conditional approach to business, how do we, or even better, what is our true potential that's it. That's the question. What is our true potential in the new approach to business? That's the question we want to answer, right?
Yeah. And how do you go about doing it? So for instance, like using the old approach to business, my first online course that I made a few years ago, Traffic Lab, I was using the old approach to business with that, and I really wanted to kind of squeeze people into it. And that was okay, but it wasn't satisfying. It was very stressful. So what happened was I got some material about personal branding, and that stuff just kept popping up for me. So I started putting it together, and I thought, right, I'll make a personal branding course. And initially it was just going to be a free bonus for people who bought a premium listing on our internationalcoachregistry.com website. But then I talked to a few people who were the ideal sort of clients for this. And as soon as I mentioned personal branding, their ears pricked up. And I mentioned the directory listing, and you could just feel the energy going blah. They weren't really interested in that at all. So don't bang their door. Yeah. We had somebody banging at the door. Anyway, so, and then I thought, right, personal branding seems to be the front door lead and the entree to this thing. And it just picked up with a momentum of its own. And as I started making that course, I thought, personal branding is part of it, but you need to understand, if you're putting together a business as a coach, counselor, therapist, consultant, or whatever, you need to understand that you've got to go through certain levels to get good at what you're doing. You need to actually learn what it's like to talk to people one-on-one, find out what they want, understand how to package and pitch your offer or describe it or whatever you want to call it, and also how to enroll people, how to actually get them to agree to pay you money. And once you've actually mastered that and you know what people want, and we have some other process around testing your ideas, then you can start to scale and list build and sell online courses and escalate your business. So I thought, right, I know all of that, and I can actually teach people not only the personal brand part, but actually how to make an irresistible offer, and how to create the blockbuster product. And I thought, I know all this stuff, and I know all the technology and all the methodologies and all the business stuff and the website stuff and the email stuff. Like, we do all of that, we know all of that. So the thing grew and grew and grew. None of that was planned, though. You see, it just popped up out of nowhere. Not from goal setting, right? It was when I tried to do it the goal setting way at Traffic Lab, it didn't really resonate, and it felt unpleasant.
So then, what do people say? So people say, opportunities present themselves when you're just doing the work. When you're just doing the work, opportunities present themselves. When you're in that, let's just say, that flow state, right? Inspiration comes, opportunities are presented. What I kind of love is what you said, and kind of what we're talking about here is goal setting. And we want to achieve goal setting allows us to achieve our potential in the old way, right? But the question here is this new approach to business is what is our true potential in this new approach to business and life? That is like, if we can figure out how to answer that question, I'm going to ask Joshua tomorrow if I get a chance. Like, what is our true potential, Joshua, in this new approach to life? Like, if goal setting's out and manifesting's done, and everything's perfect, then what is our true potential? Like, what is it? And if we can help clarify that, that's exciting. Like, right to your point, if it's alignment, if it's happiness, if it's more joy, that is hugely important, right? But is that all we're looking for? And if that's it, then okay.
Yeah, that's a good question. At the next level, just going back down to a less elevated level, one of the things about goal setting is that when you set a goal on the 1st of January and it's a year-long goal or whatever, by the time you get to June, if you are honest and if you're open-minded and life's moving along and having fun, everything's changed so much that goal is no longer relevant, which makes me realize another way to frame this actually was I used to say, oh, when I get to the end of the year, I wish I'd set bigger goals. And that's one of the problems with goal setting is that you grow and change and expand so fast in your opportunities if you're in sync and in the flow, that in fact they become very limiting because, well, that is just a particular idea I had back then, but as it turns out, the opportunity is something quite different and it could be far bigger than I imagined. Like I didn't have a goal, but I had some objectives around this course. And you said, well, why don't you offer some high ticket back-end coaching around it as well? And even though it's part of the model I was teaching, it hadn't occurred to me. And if I'd set a goal around that, which the goal would have been, no, I'm doing this course and my aim is to start at this price, as the beta offer, and then move it to such and such price, and then to sell X number of them so I can make X amount of money. But my goal with this really was, man, this can help so many people, they're going to love it. And so that's not a goal that was really how I felt about it. It's just there's so much good stuff in there and it can help so many people. And then it's like, well, what's the next level from that? So none of that really was, including discovering the thing about personal branding being so appealing to people, none of that could have come from a goal setting exercise.
Yeah, no, you're right. I love that. Goal setting is limiting because, to your point, at the end of the year, you're I wish I would have set, that's a great comment. I wish I would have set bigger goals. So the idea of what we're doing right now is it's truly tapping into your true potential at every possible moment. It's never limiting, right? It's always expanding, right? So while goal setting, I think, is an important part of our cultural sort of attitude towards success. It's really a very limiting a tool. So
yeah,
right.
We see if I'd set some goals around the business, what are we? It's April 1st here actually, 31st of March there. So if I'd set some goals back in January around this, it potentially could have meant that I missed this opportunity completely because I was looking down this particular path. And I've heard it said that opportunity whispers, it doesn't shout. And because it whispered past, I would have missed it completely. And this is a far more satisfying and rich opportunity than anything I could have dreamed up on the 1st of January.
Yeah, and see, and I kind of feel the same way when I'm looking at my goals, or when I'm looking at my, I guess it kind of goes back to you got to focus on the present moment, right? You can't get all tangled up.
Yeah, you said that before, and you're so right, because the past is a bunch of memories, and if you're really honest and analyze it, your memories of the past are pretty poor. And if you talk to people about things that happened, you can see that their recollection's completely different from yours. And you talk to 10 people and they've all got a different recollection. They remember different bits of it. And so our memory of the past is really super inaccurate. And then if you're looking forward to the future, then that's just your imagination, like the future. If you're worried about something in the future, then that's just being fearful. I mean, the future, like you can project something into that, but life unfolds a moment at a time, and all the sages and all of the wise people and spiritual leaders and teachers have always said, live in the present moment. And we all kind of understand it, but what does that look like?
That's that you just said it. I mean, I just said we're going to replace goal setting with present moment intentions, right? What does that look like? That we can describe that to somebody. That's a powerful tool.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's sort of where I'm like today's the coaching call that we did today with our team, like, and understanding that goal setting is outdated. It just doesn't, it's the old approach. It
Yeah.
doesn't meet what we need anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of those things that's when I first came across it, I was quite skeptical about it, because I didn't have a business background, and I thought how silly. And I was also scared about putting myself on the line because I was too much of a rebel. And then so for years I did the goal setting, but if I was really honest, what I achieved in any year was not a function of the goals, and I never achieved those goals. Well, I actually did, but typically so much more as well, which is why I said I should have had a bigger goal. But that's the point. On the 1st of January, it's pretty hard to conceptualize the size of the goal that you could achieve on the 31st of December, and you don't know quite how it's going to unfold. And that's really, I guess, what we're looking at as well. The big opportunities and big things that happen in my life were quite different from what I set as a goal. And if I'd been focused on the goals, I would have missed many of those things, such as this current course opportunity.
Right. I mean, it's funny too. Like, I mean, I've spent a lot of time writing business plans. It's a 3-year plan. I don't even know how to process the ridiculousness of a 3-year plan, right? 5 years. I want to see the 5-year plan. I mean, this is what I spend a lot of my time doing. So when it really comes to realization that these things are just silly.
Well, that is true. 3 and 5 year plans are completely ridiculous, because let's say you wrote your 3 or 5 year plan in January 2 years ago, whatever that was, before the pandemic, right? Before anybody, or a couple of months before that, before anybody had any idea of the pandemic. I mean, that is an extreme example, but any 3 or 5 year plan I've ever seen in business, everything changed so fast that nobody had any idea. And
Yep.
Computing and apps and everything else and social media channels, like everything changes. You could have had a 3 or 5 year plan as a motor car manufacturer, auto manufacturer, and then suddenly electric cars become a thing. Suddenly energy prices might skyrocket, and so who knows what's going to happen. So, and it's, you might say, I think it's good to have a general intention that we want to be this kind of a business and we want to serve people in the following ways, but it's to be much more specific than that is kind of pointless. I guess it's about fear and reassurance, and I suppose people have learned these methodologies in business school, and some of that's valid. I mean, a lot of the stuff is valid, but 3 and 5 year plans, I agree, are completely ridiculous.
Well, let's take a step back and look at the statistics. I think 95% of businesses go out of business in the first 3 years,
which wasn't in their plan. Yeah.
Right. So, and I think Tony Robbins' quote is whatever. I think it's, if you're in business after 7 years, you're in like the 1% club. I don't know the exact numbers, right?
Sure. Yeah.
But
yeah.
it's extreme. So every business has a business plan.
That's right. And what happens is you go to the market, and then you find that the market actually wants something quite different. And whatever thing you start out with in a startup, pretty much that's not what you end up with. I've been through many startups, as have you, and any product as well. The products, I started out with this thing being a bonus for a directory listing, and then it's like, no, the market actually wants the personal branding, and then I can see what else they need, and if I put all that together, so that could not have worked from a goal setting or from a 3 or 5 year business plan.
I love that. It's so true. And it is this general intention. It's general intention to be open, to be aligned every day, to work in joy, and whatever you're doing, right? If you set that general intention every day to work in joy, to have love, to identify any negative sort of nudges, any limiting beliefs, to spend the time to process them, to look at them, to understand that your reality is a feedback loop of your perspective of yourself. if you
Yeah.
take those steps, right, at the end of a year, you would achieve 10x as opposed to setting 10 goals.
So that's one of the things, you and I know this, that if you detach from the goal setting and business plan model, that ultimately you'll have far more satisfaction, potentially achieve a lot more as well. And that's why I used the Gary Vee example, because I took that as a metaphor for, if I let go of these certain things that I think give me success, controlling conditions and all the rest of it, if I let go of a rigid way of thinking, I'm not saying he has that, but it's an analogy, then it's all going to fall apart and I won't make any money and I'll lose everything. But that's not necessarily the case at all. Far from it. It's more likely that the opposite will occur, that you'll get more of what you want, not less. But that, I mean, then that becomes a complex area. And you and I have talked about working with CEOs and people like that as to how they can live a more authentic life. I often use the example of lawyers. I happen to know a lot of lawyers over the years who have been very unhappy, hate their work, hate their job. And I know a couple of family members qualified from law school, 20 years ago, whatever it is. And they come out of law school, and law school teaches you that you are the ruler of the planet. You're incredible. You're amazing. The law is this wonderful institution, and you're just going to have the best career ever. They get out there and they start doing law, and it's like, oh, this sucks. Maybe the next promotion will be better. No, that sucks as well. And those two people went off and did something completely different. And they're very successful. They're very capable, and they're really, really happy, and that they've got great freedom, and they've got an amazing life, and they've paid off their mortgage, and they go traveling with their kids, and it's incredible. So I also know a bunch of lawyers, guys my age roughly, and they still do the same thing, and they're depressed, and they're taking antidepressants, and they got major health issues, and they work all the time, and they hate it. But they're not prepared to let go of it, because the money, the persona, the position, the conditioning, the thought, I'm a lawyer. And it's like, wow, so you're going to do that for 40 years. And then there was a thing Joshua said the other day, you do something you don't like for 40 years, you play golf, you retire, you play golf, and you die. And that's it. It's like, really? And I thought, yeah, okay, I don't want that life. No, thank you.
I not even a question. I do think there's a connection between what Joshua says, what meditation is. It's the idea is that you're letting go of your desires. There is a fear that, let's just say I want a mansion on the water, I want fancy cars, and I want unlimited money, right? To be ridiculous on one side. So those are my desires. If I let go of those desires, does it mean I'm going to become a bum on the street, but a happy bum on the street? Right? Is that what I'm doing? And the answer is no, of course not.
No, well, no,
that's the first thing that pops in your mind,
that
right?
way, and they're not bums on the street.
Right? But that's the thing that pops in your mind. So you won't have any desires. You won't.
Yeah, that was why I used Gary Vee as an example, because he was fearful when he said that thing, that if I start meditating, I'll lose some of the things that he attributes to his success. Whereas he probably is far more powerful and has far more attributes, and he may realize it now. I haven't listened for a while, but he probably is far more amazing than he even realizes.
100%. And if you and I can document this on video, what we just talked about, that we're letting go. I mean, you could just Google my name and look at the past. I mean, I've been through it all, right? You talk about someone who went from here to here. I mean, I'm literally a 180 at this point from where I was 5 years ago, an exact 180. So there's history to say it took me 5 years to get to the point where we're having this conversation right now. 6 years, 10 years of personal development, but 6 years, truly the last 6 years where I hit rock bottom and came, down here. And this is a point, this is a pivot point right here, because I'm now at a point where I'm asking certain questions and I'm taking certain action, and I'm letting go of control, and I'm letting go of the old approach to life, and I'm embracing the new approach to life, right? I'm letting go of a conditional life and taking the approach of an unconditional life. So we're at a moment in time right now where we could say, hey, when that Gary Vee says, well, no, let me show you the example of what happens. to a guy that was so aggressive he would make you look like a kitten, right? And then you go boom. And if we could show people that, I think that illustration, that is, and that's what we're doing. That's what you and I are doing right now. I mean, that's exactly what we're doing. We're just saying, let's document it. And you're smart enough to create a course around it.
Yeah. Well, the idea popped in, as things do. So, okay, well, that's probably a good point to bring it to a close today. I'm really looking forward to making these videos around working through the course together. So
can't wait.
Yeah, it's exciting. It's going to be a fun ride.
Absolutely.
With you. Yeah.
I love it. So, hey, we'll talk. I know tomorrow we have our other group meeting, but we'll talk next week. So chat with you soon.
We'll talk soon next week. Yep. Okay. Thanks. See you, Jerry.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.